So with that, I will hand it over to you, Dr. Harris.
Okay, thank you, Shanna. Spending time talking about sugar, a topic I wish I didn't have so much experience with, but I really do. All right, let's start out talking about who I am. Amelia, I'm the clinical psychologist and bariatric program coordinator at Total Weight Loss Center. And I need to tell you about my disclosures that, what I'm not. I have no financial interest in what we're talking about today. I'm very interested in sugar, but I'm not profiting by this. I'm certainly not supported by Crumble today. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a registered dietitian. And I wanted to mention one more thing. I do have experience in working with addictions, and we are talking about some addiction related terms today. However, we're not diagnosing anyone, and any comments I make today or terms that are brought up about addiction are not, meant to infer a diagnosed substance disorders of any kind. All right, so let's get started. Now, if you're spending this hour with us today, I'm imagining that maybe you have a hard time cutting back on sugar, or tried or want to or considering it. So if you are, you're in the right place. It's a tough one. It's everywhere. I had imagined it was everywhere, but then digging into it to prepare for today, I was really amazed at what I found, and you might be too. So just want to let you know you're in the right spot, and we're in this together, and we're going to help you through it, not just today, but down the road too. So this is what the day is going to look like, or our hour. First, we're just going to have a little bit of a sugar school. We'll talk about some science of sugar. We'll have a little lab connected with that. We'll do a little math, and don't worry, if that's not your favorite subject, it's fun math, simple math. Have a surprise attached to our school part of this. Then we'll get down to it, the sugar traps. That's what you came for. We're going to talk about how to avoid sugar traps if you possibly can, but mostly what to do with those, solutions for sugar traps. And then we'll try to leave a little time for questions if you have any, and we're going to talk about more resources, where to find those. Okay. When I said neuroscience, really meant talk about science. It's really neuroscience. We're talking about the brain-gut connection and what the brain does with sugar, how it handles that. So, like a lot of educators are doing these days, I couldn't think of a better way to introduce this than with a TED Talk and a video. I mean, that's the way of the world these days. So this is just a quick 5-minute video that does a great job of explaining what our brain does with sugar. And we're going to be referring back to this afterwards. Here we go.
Picture warm, gooey cookies, crunchy candies, velvety cakes, waffle cones piled high with ice cream. Is your mouth watering? Are you craving dessert? Why? What happens in the brain that makes sugary foods so hard to resist? Sugar is a general term used to describe a class of molecules called carbohydrates, and it's found in a wide variety of food and drink. Just check the labels on sweet products you buy. Glucose, fructose, sucrose, maltose, lactose, dextrose, and starch are all forms of sugar. So are high fructose corn syrup, fruit juice, raw sugar, and honey. And sugar isn't just in candies and desserts. It's also added to tomato sauce, yogurt, dried fruit, flavored waters, or granola bars. Since sugar is everywhere, it's important to understand how it affects the brain. What happens when sugar hits your tongue? And does eating a little bit of sugar make you crave more? You take a bite of cereal. The sugars it contains activate the sweet taste receptors, part of the taste buds on the tongue. These receptors send a signal up to the brainstem, and from there it forks off into many areas of the forebrain, one of which is the cerebral cortex. Different sections of the cerebral cortex process different tastes: bitter, salty, umami, and in our case, sweet. From here, the signal activates the brain's reward system. This reward system is a series of electrical and chemical pathways across several different regions of the brain. It's a complicated network, but it helps answer a single subconscious question. Should I do that again? That warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you taste grandma's chocolate cake? That's your reward system saying, yes. And it's not just activated by food. Socializing, sexual behavior, and drugs are just a few examples of things and experiences that also activate the reward system. But overactivating this reward system kickstarts a series of unfortunate events: loss of control, craving, and increased tolerance to sugar. Let's get back to our bite of cereal. It travels down into your stomach and eventually into your gut. And guess what? There are sugar receptors here too. They're not taste buds, but they do send signals telling your brain that you're full, or that your body should produce more insulin to deal with the extra sugar you're eating. The major currency of our reward system is dopamine, an important chemical or neurotransmitter. There are many dopamine receptors in the forebrain, but they're not evenly distributed. Certain areas contain dense clusters of receptors, and these dopamine hotspots are a part of our reward system. Drugs like alcohol, nicotine, or heroin send dopamine into overdrive, leading some people to constantly seek that high. In other words, to be addicted. Sugar also causes dopamine to be released, though not as violently as drugs. And sugar is rare among dopamine-inducing foods. Broccoli, for example, has no effect, which probably explains why it's so hard to get kids to eat their veggies. Speaking of healthy foods, let's say you're hungry and decide to eat a balanced meal. You do, and dopamine levels spike in the reward system hotspots. But if you eat that same dish many days in a row, dopamine levels will spike less and less, eventually leveling out. That's because when it comes to food, the brain evolved to pay special attention to new or different tastes. Why? 2 reasons. First, to detect food that's gone bad. And second, because the more variety we have in our diet, the more likely we are to get all the nutrients we need. To keep that variety up, we need to be able to recognize a new food, and more importantly, we need to want to keep eating new foods. And that's why the dopamine levels off when a food becomes boring. Now back to that meal. What happens if in place of the healthy, balanced dish, you eat sugar-rich food instead? If you rarely eat sugar, or don't eat much at a time, the effect is similar to that of the balanced meal. But if you eat too much, the dopamine response does not level out. In other words, eating lots of sugar will continue to feel rewarding. In this way, sugar behaves a little bit like a drug. It's one reason people seem to be hooked on sugary foods. So think back to all those different kinds of sugar. Each one is unique, but every time any sugar is consumed, it kickstarts a domino effect in the brain that sparks a rewarding feeling. Too much too often, and things can go into overdrive. So yes, overconsumption of sugar can have addictive effects on the brain. But a wedge of cake once in a while won't hurt you.
Okay, I don't know if anything in particular in that stood out for you, but yeah, now at least you'll know why broccoli doesn't seem to have the same pull that, candy or cake does. A couple things that I wanted to mention there. Sometimes I'll have someone say someone who's been on certain medications to help with weight loss, say, especially stimulants, say that, it was great when I was on it, but as soon as I went off, I gained the weight back. Some of those medications are working on these same centers of the brain that impact dopamine. So yeah, when they're on them, great, the desire isn't there because it's satisfying that. And then when you go off, it's just like game on, that control isn't there. So this is an area where we're just learning a lot about. And I want to say up front that got to look at this with, depends on the lens you look at it with. because statistics are going to say sometimes what we're looking for, but the research is just starting to be there more and more that sugar and the brain, and especially too much sugar, overconsumption of sugar, can really cause some problems. But I would say it's a problem when it's a problem. It's a problem when it's a problem for you. But what stood out for me there is that part, should I do that again? The brain, and I spoke about habits earlier this year, I think it was this year, and the same question came up. The brain relies on habits because it just makes our life easier. And so we'll do something and it'll store it if it's something worth repeating. And sugar gets encoded fast. You know, they'll say, well, you know, it takes so many days for a habit to stick. It doesn't seem to be the case with sugar. We have that, you know, I can start a gummy bear eating habit pretty fast. It's not going to take me, you know, 3 months, where other habits are harder to stick. So if you ask yourself how hard it is to start certain habits, stop other habits, you know, how hard has it been to quit sugar or stay off of sugar? And it's all impacted by that reward system. It's been rewarding, and so that we keep doing it. The other part that stands out to me in that video is this idea of that food, you know, we're kind of designed so that our brain needs to be able to decide if food is, it gets bored if it eats the same thing over and over. And that's protective for us because it has to be able to decide, oh, is this got enough nutrients in it? We have to have variety to get enough nutrients, or it needs to be able to identify if a food has gone bad. So this makes sugar different than other foods because no matter how much it gets, it still finds it interesting and novel somehow. So when it comes to addiction science, that's, you know, one thing we're finding out, that it's different than other foods. No matter how much we have, we don't seem to get bored with it. All right, enough on that. We're going to move into our lab and find out, how did things get so sweet? Well, when it comes to what kinds of sugars there are and what kinds of sweetnesses there are, it's simple and not so simple. There's two kinds of sugar that we're going to pay attention to. There's the natural sugar, and that is pretty easy. There's the fruits and sugars that come from fruits and vegetables. So in that category, we have fructose, glucose, sucrose. But then what we're going to be focusing on today are, well, no, there's actually three kinds here, but we're going to have two categories. We have the natural sugars, then we have the added sugars and the artificial sweeteners. And the added sugar categories, there's something like 60 plus of those. And then the artificial sweeteners, there's more and more of these. I saw some graphs show that added sugar, well, depending on where you look, added sugar consumption was going down a little bit, but that isn't really true if you consider how much artificial sweetener we're consuming now. So that gets complicated, but that includes all of the pink, blue, and yellow packets, plus now the stevias, monk fruits, all of those too. Here's a few of the names of sugar. Now, included in here are some of the names of the natural sugar, but most of these are just the actually fake sugars, artificial sugar. So quick, memorize that because we'll be using that in just a minute here. All right. Okay, so that was a quick sugar lab. That's going to come in handy in a little bit. We're going to move on to math. I don't know if any of you remember the game Candyland. Played, it comes in a digital form now, but it was it's just simple little board game that, you know, teaches kids how to count. And then the part of this game is you don't want to get stuck in like the molasses swamp and try to avoid things like that. It's really interesting when you think about it, all the different ways that sugar is embedded in our culture just from birth on. candy is fun, candy is games. It's just, it's all over the place. Candyland actually was one of my favorite games. Well, let's see. We're going to add up some simple math now using our nutrition labels. It hasn't been that long ago, a few years ago, they tried to make how we look at sugar, adding up our sugars simpler by not just having sugar, but where that is on the package now includes added sugar. So we have the natural sugars here, but then under that will be, if any added sugars are included, it will also be identified on a package. Now, I know for some of you, this might be like such a basic review. You probably already know this, but not for everyone. And it becomes important because when we look at what is, what's creating such a problem, especially if somebody is saying, well, I don't know what's happened. I lost weight, but now it's creeping back, or, things are just different now than they used to be. We got to look at areas like this, like where is sugar sneaking in? And this is one of the biggest culprits is right here, these added sugars. So this is the first place we're gonna look, is just turning over packages and seeing where are the added sugars. All right. Well, how much is too much? How much should we even be having? Again, I get that for some people, this is like, oh, we already know that. So that some of this is a little bit of a review, and it gets complicated. Even in terms of what is recommended, it really varied. So for example, the CDC has its recommendation, and that is to limit the added sugars to less than 10% of total calories in a day. And they don't separate out kids from adults, male from female. They just lump it all together and say, based on a 2,000 calorie diet, that would be 200 calories for 50 grams of sugar or 12 teaspoons. So I put a little, and that's like, oh my God, okay, what would that look like? There's tons of visual aids. If you are somebody that likes to, good visuals, you can Google those. But basically, a teaspoon is a sugar cube, is a sugar packet. So hold on to that, but don't get too attached, because here we go. The American Heart Association has different recommendations. They do break it out more. And that is that their recommendations are quite a bit different, quite a bit lower, that sugar should be limited to no more than 6% of calories each day. So again, you want to figure out what this would be for you, but they're saying no more than 6 teaspoons, men no more than 9 teaspoons, men get more. All right, but again, you want to follow what your physician or what your dietitian recommends. Now, keto keto has been really hot in the last several years, and that's a program that would, possibly have even less than this. So again, hear people, I was fine when I was on keto. It's the going off keto. Atkins was one of the original very low sugar programs, and it was not uncommon to see, and part of that would be the introducing carbs, sugar back in, and that is where we would see the weight coming back on. It is the adding sugars back in that tends to be where a lot of problems come back for people. I should say, as a side note, we are not talking about we're not talking about flour, really other carbs here. But a lot of people that have a hard time cutting back on sugar do end up also just cutting back on flour too at the same time, because they tend to affect the same areas of the brain. So, all right, we're going to relook at this list again before we do the next part, because the more familiar you are with all the names of sugar, the easier you'll have being able to spot these when you go to look for them. All right. How many teaspoons of sugar would be your max to have in a day when you go to look for them, your added sugars in a thing. All right. Hidden sugars. So the thing is, some things are hidden in plain sight in the grocery store. And what did I see? Oh, it was on a can of red beans I saw the other day. I was shocked the amount of hidden sugar that was in there. So some things are just hidden in food. Salad dressing is a common one that has a lot of added extra sugars. Yogurt is one. Then other things are not a shock. It wouldn't shock you that a crumble cookie has like up to like 36 grams of added sugar in it. So just not just taking it for granted that, you know, this probably does because it's sweet or this probably doesn't. Just always checking. All right. We covered that. We covered how much sugar to have, where to check on the label, how to do the math for that. So time to take a break and surprise field trip. You expected to see more pictures of donuts or cookies there. Time to take a break and look at something cute, little chicks or something. All right. Ready for the field trip? Here we go. All right. Going to the, gonna do a little shopping here or go throughout the day and see what we can find in a day, but I'm gonna warn you, up to 77, or I even saw some statistics that had more % of grocery store items contain added sugar. Wonder if that really would surprise anyone. And this is just your average grocery store. Some places, probably a lot more of the items have added sugar. The checkout at some, even like retail stores, like clothing stores, are starting to have like candy and snacks. It doesn't really make sense why Old Navy has candy and snacks in the checkout, but all those items have added sugar. So depending on where you are, this could be a lot more. Of course, there's farmers markets and those kind of things that, you know, this would be a lot less, if at all, but just have to really, you know, think about where you're going to be and what's going to be available, because it's just literally everywhere. All right, I'm going to take you through someone's average day and play a little game. This is some version of Candyland. All right, so to win this game, and you can think about your own day here. So to win this game, we want to end the day. We're going on the high end here. We're not using the heart association version here. We're going to use the CDC version, and we want to keep our sugar grams to 12 teaspoons or 50 grams or less. So we're going to start out the day with a very popular item, not Starbucks, grande frappuccino. And all of a sudden we are already up to 13.5 teaspoons. So if you didn't know that, you would be in for a big shock later when you go to put it in your MyFitnessPal or one of those. All right, but that's okay. You can't backtrack. So just gonna go on here and then, okay, well, can't undo that damage. So moving on through the game, okay, here's this awesome choice. Yogurt with high protein and some almonds have 0 added sugar. All right, then going out through the afternoon, let's see that afternoon, a lot of times, you know, people say they get a little tired or have a little slump in the afternoon. So, well, sounds like a decent snack. Organic, gluten-free too. Licorice, 32 grams added sugar. And that's just in 2 servings of that bag. All right, so we'll do better. Dinner, no added sugars, but then something I hear a lot. Did okay throughout the day, but then right before bed or it was after dinner where some snacking a lot of times will come in. But again, it was gluten-free. 14 grams of sugar. So this day ends with 100 grams of sugar, or 25 teaspoons. But if you look at it, this day wasn't really that much food altogether. It was just that the things that were in here really, really added up. And you might be, I can't see any comments or anything. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, there were so many things to do different here. To back into a better day, or to avoid it from the start, doing swaps, starting out with swaps at Starbucks, or adding in, and it would all be right. But a couple reasons I wanted to show this is, one, the gluten-free world, which is big, is a high sugar world. And there can be things that we could technically identify as healthy or healthier, like organic, that can still be just loaded with sugar. And also that having some sugar for a lot of people tends to kick off wanting more sugar throughout the day. So that's me. Yeah, that's me for sure. All right, so let's move on. Which came for sugar traps. So we're gonna help you with a strategy for not getting into sugar traps and for creating a plan around those. So here we go. First one is not honoring your own personal style. So we all have personality style. I mean, there's people who are real cold turkey kind of people. There's others who really like to ease in. I think of are you somebody who just jumps in that cold water, just wants to get in? Or are you somebody who has to ease, tiptoe your way into something? If you're somebody who's ever smoked, were you cold turkey, or did you just really taper down from that? And not respecting that is a trap, because how other people, you can be motivated by other stories, but if you're not doing it your way, that's can be really setting yourself up for a trap. Having said that, I will say, if you are the ease into it personality type, when we're talking about sugar and setting up, how you're going to better manage it, if let's say you're going to, and some people do really just totally cut off all added sugars. Some put their limits around, the 6 teaspoons a day or the 12. Set yourself and this goes into the next slide we're going to look at. But if you're the ease into it type, watch out for I'm going to ease into it over 5 years. Give yourself a time frame around that, because it can, it can kind of, you can really lose your way if you're easing into it too slowly there. So just respecting your personality and knowing yourself is probably one of the biggest traps, especially when we have social media can really be such a force, and it's like people have doing it my way and you'll become like me. Okay, well, that's, you do you. That's what I want to say there. Okay, next one is not having a plan. All right, so the solution to this sounds easy, but it's really not, because it's like, well, yeah, I know how to do this, I've done it so many times. But really getting specific on your strategy for change, starting with why. This is a both long-term and short-term vision type of stuff. When it comes to cutting down sugar, I did not focus on all the reasons to, because there's so many reasons to. You probably already have a lot of reasons to. I mean, everything from supporting weight loss to maintaining weight loss. I mean, those are a few, to reducing inflammation, but I mean, it improves your skin, it improves your health, it improves, I mean, there's just every kind of reason. Diabetes, there's so many. You only need one. You just need one. There are hundreds, but you only need one. Having both short-term and long-term can be really important. This is like with weight loss, sometimes people are really super motivated in the short term because they're preparing for like a knee replacement. They need to lose weight first, or they're preparing for a special occasion. But then the long term is important because you got to stay on track. What matters is your reason, your why. When it comes to sugar, that's a big deal because we went through it. It's everywhere. You will not, I can't walk out this door without going very far, running into some sugar. So I need to have a very clear reason, a meaningful reason why I just want to get through the next hour and the next day, as well as down the road with committing to having less sugar in my life. Okay. Committing to, mentioned this previously, committing to a quit date, I would say within the next 2 weeks would, you need to decide that for you, what makes sense in your life. With quitting smoking, I'll say, a lot of times people say, well, when I'm less stressed, when I don't have this thing coming up, there's always more stress, There's always a next thing. It has to make sense for you. Again, I wouldn't push it too far out. A big part of plan too is the what. That's gathering the tools. If you need any equipment, any resources for success, pull those together around you. Who is we are part of your who. We're part of your support system. Who else is part of your support? Do you need anyone for accountability to say, hey, I am cutting back on sugar. I'm quitting sugar. And is there anyone you want to say that to that's around you to help hold you accountable or to join you? I should say, if it's a family member or anyone in your home, if you have anyone else around that you live with, they don't have to be on board. This is a tough one sometimes to get on board with, but you can still put it out there. So are there any who's in your life that can be a part of your plan? Who's involved in this? And the how, this is considering the steps, the actions, actual behaviors, your thoughts, your attitude for the lasting change. I include in there that how will you get over a setback, because there might be some. So I know that's a lot in the plan, but having a plan, sitting down, actually writing out a plan. If you haven't ever done that, we do that for other big things, right? So this is big. Okay, let's talk about trap 3. You ever saying to yourself, well, I'll just have one. So I'll say it's a problem if it's a problem. If this isn't you, then it's not you. If you have any foods where saying, well, I'll just have one, I'll just have a little, hasn't worked or doesn't tend to be how it goes, then yeah, that's a trap. Telling yourself that, just challenge it. Has that worked in the past? Has the having just one worked in the past, or has it led to more or a little bit more? Or has that just one led to something else that you didn't plan? In the video, it talked about this, that the brain just, it's that reward center of the brain. It gets activated. And while sugar doesn't react quite as violently, as how it said that, as some other drugs like cocaine, it does set it off. So So there's science behind, there's reasons why that happens. It's not just like, oh, I just don't have any willpower at all, but that dopamine gets activated and the body just kind of likes it. And, you know, it says there that should I do that again? And the answer comes back is, yes, I should do that again. I should have some more of that again. So if you've told yourself, oh, I can just have one, I can just have a little, and that hasn't tended to work out in the past, really challenge that in the future, challenge that next time, and maybe don't have the just one, and see how that turns out. These questions, do you have more than you planned? Have you tried to cut back and not been able? Have you continued to have sweets or whatever it is? And even when you don't feel good later, even if there's been consequences like to your health, emotionally, how you feel about yourself, those questions, in psychology, it's called the DSM. It's the book of how disorders are classified. I'm not a big fan really of diagnosis. It's really just, it's how other psychologists or providers communicate with each other. It's also, to be honest, how insurance gets paid. However, when it comes to substance use, these are a big part of how it's diagnosed, substance use disorders. Answering yes to these. So again, this is not for diagnosis, but it can be helpful to think, wow, you know, do I do those things when it comes to sugar? I gotta say, yes, honestly, yes, myself. That's me a lot of the time. So, and it has been argued that sugar, it's been come close to being passed before, but it's been argued that sugar should be considered as one of the addictive substances in the DSM. So stay tuned for that. Okay. Track 4 is take a moment here, anyone, if you need to. So having a reliance on fake sweeteners. So the solution here is to retrain your brain. And I'm not suggesting go ahead and have the real Coke here, but fake sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, doesn't matter what form they come in, whether it's I don't know what to call those natural fake sweeteners like stevia or the like Splenda or those, they're hundreds of times sweeter than the just regular sugar. And they impact that reward pathway that we saw in the video, but only partially. So what happens is it gets triggered because that, you know, the tongue gets the taste of sweet and then it sets off that activation center in the brain. But what happens is that it gets the sweet signal, but then the rest of it doesn't happen. It's like the brain does not compute. Like it can't finish out the cycle. In nature, when you know, when we get something really sweet in nature, like a really sweet piece of fruit or something like that, natural sugar, what comes after that is, you know, calories and nutrition. But that's not what happens when we have just this artificial sweet. So it's like the brain, the body goes in search and it can just keep eating more and more, trying to feel like complete that loop. So that's why what we're seeing is that people who consume lots of diet sodas, we're actually finding there tends to be obesity and overweight in these people, overeating. So that's been something kind of interesting, surprising and interesting, that it sets off this loop. Plus that the taste, it can be harder than to satisfy the sweetness, because the sweet taste, because it's so much sweeter. Also, a lot of research coming out that artificial sweeteners increase cravings. So my goodness, I mean, that's something we don't want. So the good news is we can retrain our brains. Like it's not all is lost. So we can retrain our brains. if you, oops, sorry, if you are somebody who is hooked on Diet Coke or regular Coke, you know, that is, I would say the great news is that this single change of not having soda, as tough as it can be, is going to be one of the best things you can do to improve your health. Not simple, but one of the best, with just that one single change, just starting there of not having that. If you're somebody who's had or is considering having weight loss surgery, for sure is one of the top things you can do to protect the short and long-term result of that. All right, number 5. Okay, this is a tough one for sure, because this impacts a lot. Top 5 is this kind of thinking, but it's my birthday, but it's my kid's birthday, but it's whatever holiday, but it's the weekend, but I'm celebrating. Fill in the blank. You're gonna have to think in your own life what kinds of meals, celebrations, social gatherings you have that don't include some kind of sweet. A lot of people tell me, it's like, well, it's not, dinner isn't over until we've had our sweet. So think about that for your own life. Yeah, this might not be everybody, but it's a lot of people. Shoot, so many of the holidays, they're just centered around sweets. So when it comes to committing to doing something different, this is tough. A lot of this is going to come back to your why, your reason that you even want to do something different, and getting real with that. It could get, and again, we didn't go over this, as all the health reasons you might want to do something different, but that's going to get tough, and that's why you might even want to have it written down and commit with somebody. What are you willing to do different? Putting in your plan how you will navigate and handle celebrations, social situations, or just your average dinner when you want to have something sweet after is going to be really big, because that reward center is everything about it's going to be saying, oh, but it's not a celebration because I haven't had the sweet. And again, challenging that the society is not going to be on your side here, but you can do something different. So that I'm being the change. Are you willing to do that? Do you want to do that? You can. You most certainly can, but it's going to take something. All right. What happens if you get caught in the sugar trap? I put that in the section because a lot of times that's where it's going to happen, is things are going to be going great. You're going to be keeping your sugars, your added sugars at a certain level, or maybe you're somebody who decided to just quit sugar, and then it's going to be Labor Day. Had to think of the next one that's coming up, or just anything. I celebrated a birthday yesterday, actually. My daughter's birthday, and well, I was doing great, but then so-and-so brought me, they made me a cookie cake, and what could I do? They made it just for me. And then I just thought, well, I was only going to have just one, but then I had some more. Whatever your thing is, then all of a sudden you're in a trap. Then what? The top thing I can say about that, it's always Monday. So I'll wait till Monday to start over. It doesn't matter if it's the next hour, the next meal, the next morning, just get right back. Go back to your reasons why, go back to your plan, and just recommit. I don't care if you have to recommit 10 times a day, just recommit to why. This is hard. Sugar is everywhere you look. This is hard. And then I want to ask you, can we have fun without sugar? Is it possible? Can we? I believe so. But it's going to be rethinking how we do some things. So The United States, we won. We are the top sugar consuming country, followed by Germany, I believe, and then the Netherlands. So we won that one. So, but we can still have fun. We can definitely have fun. I went through all those things, including the artificial sweeteners, because as we start to turn things around, I really encourage you to not swap them out just for other sweet taste, artificial sweeteners, because that is just another trap. Okay. See here. What we see as normal changes over time. I remember when you could smoke on an airplane, which was in 1990, that changed for good. I believe in 1988, it started to change. You could still smoke on some flights of a certain duration, and then 1990 that was over, but I remember that. And now it's hard to even imagine. There, used to be cigarette vending machines and in hospitals, used to be able to smoke more freely in hospitals. Now you can get a Coke, and they hand out sugary cookies on airplanes. It's hard to imagine this. If we'll look back and ever say, oh my gosh, I remember when they used to give out sugar to babies on airplanes. We could just drink sugar freely, and they handed out packs of sugar on airplanes. I remember when they used to have sugar in hospital vending machines. I don't know, but maybe we'll look back and this time and say, oh, you won't believe how we used to do things. We used to fill up, baskets of sugar and give them to kids at Easter and stuff. I don't know, that's a stretch, right? But what is normal changes, and we have new normals. We've been finding that out for sure. And it starts somewhere. So there's new research just in the last few years on how sugar is impacting the brain and the gut and how it's all tied together. And each of us has to be really motivated for our own personal reasons to want to make a change, because it's so hard. Not only is society not on our side when it comes to this, but I'll tell you, I was on sugar.org, the sugar website. They're not on our side. Interesting site to check out. Sugar lobbyists are not on our side. Big Sugar is not on our side. So be interesting to see, in 40 years, what we'll be having on airplanes for a snack. All right. I can't see if there's any questions, so let's see. All right. We have some things coming up, more series to support you, and they tie into this topic. So we have our Healthy Living series on August 10th, and we have our Cooking for Weight Loss on September 15th. And how this ties into what we're talking about today is that one of the best ways, it sounds so simple that it's hard to, it's like, well, that's, it's not a fast way to do it. But one of the best ways to really back into cutting back on sugar is to have good nutrition. Not skipping meals, having solid protein, staying just hydrated. It's just not fancy. But, if the good nutrition is there, it's that old, eating the perimeter of the grocery store and not the aisles. If that is there, you're so much less likely to give in to the cravings. So I encourage you to be a part of these, for one, or find other ways to have the good nutrition. lot of times that costs more at the front end than some of the packaged food, the sugary foods. But on the backside, when it comes to health and how you feel about yourself, can be well worth it. All right. We also have our education support group. This is for people who are with Total Weight Loss Program. That meets on the third Thursday of the month. So that being the next one is today at 6. Next month, we have Dr. Moreau speaking. Then I wanted to offer time if anybody had any questions, and also to let you know we're going to be following up on this topic down the road and getting more in detail about managing sugar cravings and binge eating.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Okay, so now is the time to enter any questions that you may have in the chat and the Q&A. I do have a question for you. You had mentioned that your brain has a different response to the artificial sugars. Am I getting that right?
Well, it actually, perceives it as sweet. Like, it's not like the brain doesn't have like a special place where it's like, oh, this is artificial sweet and this is real sugar. It treats it kind of all the same. The problem is that it can't finish the reward cycle because there's no calories there, or very few calories. So it's like that's what can kick off some cravings, because it goes in search of nutrients, because it's had the sweet taste, it's been set off. That sweet taste on the tongue then triggers those parts of the brain, but it doesn't ever get calories. So a lot of times that can like trip off cravings for actually just food in general, but a lot of times for sweets or carby things.
Got it. So then is there a difference between the sugars that you would find in like fruit then and the other like sugarcane sugars? Do they still complete the reward system in your brain?
Well, there's the natural, I'm not sure if I'm following that question, Shanna.
Natural sugars, do they, I didn't have that word natural before, so thank you.
Yeah.
Natural sugars, do they complete the loop in your brain like the sugarcane and all the other sweeteners do? Because you had said that artificial ones don't complete it.
Right. The artificial, when I say like fake sugar, some of the artificial sugars have 0 calories.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's the 0 calorie sugars is what I'm referring to there.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, let's see. Do we have any more questions? So the name of the cooking class that we're doing in September, guys, you can find all of that and you can register for all of it on nkch.org. And then if you go to, I believe it's classes and events, we just changed our website. So but you can find all of that there. And as I mentioned, we will be putting this on YouTube for you to watch and reference again. I know there was a ton of great information in there. If you didn't log in with your email address, I should be able to find it. But if you don't see it on YouTube and you need to have more information, reach out to me and or reach out to us and we can get you that information. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know that we have any more questions. Perfect. Okay. Well, just lots of thank yous, Dr. Harris.
Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate everyone spending time with me today.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.